everyone. This is Michael Govier from the Cinema 9 podcast, and you are listening to Pop Goes Your World.
If you haven't already, subscribe on iTunes. And while you're there, please leave us a rating and review.
And now it's time for our feature presentation.
I'm Chris McBrien, and the pop culture from Generation X is everything to me.
And I'm Derek Myers, and I'm here to educate Chris on the great pop culture of today's generation.
Episode 220, There Will Be Blood, movie review. Chris McBrien, that is Derek Myers, and this is Pop Goes Your World, the pop culture podcast for the generations. Now, Derek had me watch Paul Thomas Anderson's 2007 film, There Will Be Blood, starring Daniel Day-Lewis and Paul Dano. So this should be interesting, and we are going to get to that shortly. But before we do, Derek, any pop culture for you in the past week?
Of course, Chris, of course.
Always.
Can't be a week on this podcast without me having a little dive to the past to watch some old movies.
Oh, you watched old movies
so I got,
this week? Yes.
Well, I saw an old one and a newer one, and then, of course, I have a documentary. But we'll start with the new-ish one.
Okay.
So from 2012, 10 years ago, which some people would call new, and some people would say, hey, that was a decade. That was a long time ago.
You know me. You know where that falls for me.
Yeah. Well, I know you may not have seen this, but I guarantee your wife has. I watched Magic Mike. Have you seen Magic Mike?
No, I have not seen Magic Mike, but yes, you're right. My wife has seen it. If I remember correctly,
yes.
I think her and a bunch of her friends, they all went out to see Magic Mike when it came out. I remember. So,
Yeah,
I don't know why she'd go to see it. She just see me at home every single day like that. So,
yeah. Well, so I had seen it before. Many years ago when it first came out on video. And I think it was one of these situations where my wife was watching it, shocker, and I was in the room, but I was like playing on my phone or something. Like I wasn't really watching the movie, but I was there enough that I remembered enough of it, but I hadn't actually watched it. And so again, it was on. We had to record it on the PVR, and I thought I gotta get this thing off of there. I thought, I'm gonna give this a try. I actually enjoyed it a lot more than I thought I would. It was pretty good, all things considered. And you definitely see a lot of very fit gentlemen in this movie, and in some of them you see a lot of them. And there's a lot of eye candy in this film. But no, it was pretty good, and I thought it held up well. I have not seen the sequel, but I kind of want to see it now that I just rewatched the first one. So next week's show, we may have a review of Magic Mike XXL.
Is that what the sequel is called? XXL?
Yes, I believe so. So the other one I watched, I guarantee I know you've seen this one, 1979. Ooh. I'd never seen it before. Kramer versus Kramer.
Oh, God. Kramer versus Kramer is phenomenal. It's so good.
So I'd never seen it. I knew vaguely what it was about.
Won Best Picture in 1979. Dustin Hoffman.
It was nominated for 9 Oscars. It won Best Picture, Best Actor, Best Actress Supporting Role, Best Director, Best Writing. It was nominated up and down the wazoo. It was worldwide box office for 1979. It was number 1. Yep. It beat up. Let me read you the top 10. From this year. These are the movies that
this is worldwide or this is domestic U.S.
Worldwide box office in 1979. Okay. Kramer versus Kramer, a movie about a divorce, a couple going through divorce in a time when divorce is not really happening that much in the U.S. And it's basically a character study, a dialogue piece. It's about a dad and his son. It is like it's a very mundane style movie. Yep. This movie beat out all of these other movies for top money. Okay, I'm going to start at number 10. The Muppet Movie, James Bond, Moonraker, Steve Martin in The Jerk.
The Jerk, yeah.
10. Yep. Bo Derek. Apocalypse Now. Alien, Ridley Scott, the first one, Alien. Star Trek, the motion picture, the very first adaptation of Captain Kirk's Star Trek on the screen. Rocky 2.
Oh, yeah.
The Amityville Horror was the second in the box office. And then $20 million more than that, Kramer versus Kramer.
Wow.
Like, that is a crazy top 10. Like, just ridiculous.
I think it made a lot of its money the next year in 1980 because it came out late in 79.
Yeah, that's what I think. I seem to remember that. I was doing a little homework on it, and it was just like, holy crap. And let me tell you, So Dustin Hoffman won Best Actor for it.
Yes.
He beat out Jack Lemmon, Al Pacino, Peter Sellers, and Roy Scheider for All That Jazz. Like, talk about a stacked category. Like, just crazy sauce. Like this.
It's too bad because
movie,
I mean, if it wasn't for sort of that juggernaut, you know, of Kramer versus Kramer, All That Jazz, Roy Scheider should probably have won the Oscar.
Yeah, I mean, you could argue that the director Robert Benton probably had no right to win over Apocalypse Now, Francis Ford Coppola, or even All That Jazz, Bob Fosse. But I mean, the Oscars doesn't always get it right. But this was. I went back and looked at the Oscars from that year, the nominees, and it was just like, holy crap! Talk about a who's who of the best people in the performing arts. Fantastic.
And Meryl Streep's role was quite small. Like, she had very little screen time, but I mean, you know, she took home the Oscar for that. So it was something. It was really about the relationship between him and the boy. Like, that was really the impactful part of it all. And the thing was, you have always said this, you know, movies are subject to the time in which they're set. And back then, you know, when couples broke up, the children went with the mom. That's how it went. They didn't go with the dad. And so it was sort of groundbreaking in that sense, that this was about the relationship of, you know, the young kid. You know, Justin Henry played him, of course, and then he went on to be in 16 Candles. But I mean, even his performance, he was nominated for his performance too. So good. The scene when they're eating the ice cream, oh, so good. And then the woman comes back into the picture at the very end, and of course, she's going to get him. So, yeah, no, it was a good movie. I thought. What did you think? You didn't mention. Did you like it, or do you think it was dumb, or do you like it?
Well, I liked it, but to your point, it's very much of its time. Yeah. I found that I was really. I don't want to say off-put because that wouldn't be right, but it struck me how the male, like, this was a movie all about the men and the boys. So it's like when at the beginning the wife says, "I'm leaving," the husband's all about, "How can you do this to me? And you're screwing up my life." And it was like very much like, not, "Hey, clearly you're unhappy. Hey, what have I done to contribute to this?" But I guess in the 1979, that's not how relationships worked, right? There was the gender roles, and you did what you did, and so it really just struck me as old-fashioned, definitely different than how it will be played out today, 40 years later. But no, it was good. I mean, the performance was fantastic. I mean, the performances from everyone in this movie were fantastic. The movie was good. Yeah, it's not, again, though, it's a pretty tough watch. I don't know if I would want to watch it over and over again. We talk about that rewatchability, but it's a drama. It's not designed. But I was listening to a podcast after I watched this, and there was the people on the podcast were all people who were children of divorce. And so when they were growing up, they were kids, and they talked about all that. And as someone whose parents are still together and does not have children of my own and have not experienced divorce, to me, it didn't work for me on those levels because I couldn't relate to it. But apparently for people whose parents were divorced or who have been divorced, this movie speaks to them on a whole other level that just elevates it that much more. But anyway, it was decent. Yeah, I like that.
Good. And you got to, you know, see a classic film that was an Oscar winner. So good.
Yeah. And it got one more item off my PVR, which made my wife very happy.
No kidding. So,
all right. And then I had a chance to watch a documentary.
For 40 days and 40 nights, he watches documentaries. He likes to learn about the world. It's Derek's Documentaries. Derek's Documentaries.
Please do tell.
So just dropped this week on HBO. It's a 4-hour documentary broken into two 2-hour parts, and it's all about comedian George Carlin.
Oh, I was wondering if you were going to say that. I said that to my wife.
George Carlin's American Dream.
Oh, I said it to my wife this week. I was like, we have to watch this movie, There Will Be Blood, for the podcast. But the other thing I really want to watch is Judd Apatow has come out with this documentary on George Carlin, and I want to watch it. So tell me, what's like? I mean, I know it's going to be fantastic, but go ahead.
So it's quite good, but it's quite long. And I think it was about a year ago or maybe 2 years ago, Apatow did a similar length documentary on Gary Shandling. I think it was called the Gary Shandling Diaries or something.
Okay.
But it was the same production company, and the documentary was presented in the same way with a lot of like letters and written correspondence and things of that nature that are shown on the screen, and there's certain effects that happen. So there's a very similar style of the way it was presented. And with this one, with George Carlin one that just dropped, Again, I'm marginally familiar with some of Carlin's early stuff. Obviously, I know more of his later stuff just because I was older and was sort of there when it was happening. So it was interesting. It was educational. I learned a lot about him, but I found there was a lot of little details in here that I didn't really feel added to it and just felt like filler. And in the second part, even more so than the first part, they would show long segments of his stand-up in the documentary and then talk about that. It's like, well, you just showed almost a 4 or 5 minute clip. You could have showed 30 seconds and then talked about it, and it would have had the same impact. It almost felt like they were contractually obligated to give us 4 hours, but they only had 2.5 hours, and they padded it, which I kind of think hurt it a little bit because it just felt unnecessarily long. But I'm a fan of Carlin's stuff. Maybe not everything for his whole career, but a lot of his stuff I really enjoy. I love the way he parses the nuances of language, which is a big part of how he made his bones, and his way that he's got his eye on politics, and the way he's able to comment and satire and use language to drive home a very a direct point that he's trying to make. Like I've always found his work fascinating in that sense. And I mean, personally, I agree with most of what I've seen him do, but yeah, my only criticism is that I felt this was a lot longer than it needed to be. So I'd say it's probably like a solid B. If you like Carlin, it's definitely a B. If you're not a big fan of Carlin, you probably wouldn't even maybe go more of a C, simply because you're going to find it dry. My wife said the second half, she was fast forwarding through parts. She's like, it was just so long. She didn't feel that it was going to add anything. So, but no, I would definitely say check it out. I think you'll like it more than your wife. I think your wife, knowing her movie taste, I think she's going to bail after the first part.
I remember when I was younger, there was 2 VHS tapes at our local VHS rental place in town, and I would rent them over and over again. And one was Carlin at Carnegie, and the other was Carlin on Campus. And I would watch these stand-up tapes over and over again. Carlin at Carnegie was the better of the two, but they were both so good. God, he was just like a force of nature. He was just so good. And I'm really looking forward to watching that. Okay, so for me, Derek, as you may have heard recently, actor Fred Ward passed away. So,
oh yes, I did. R.I.P. Fred Ward.
Yeah, I had a bit of free time this weekend, so I decided I had to watch Remo Williams' The Adventure Begins. We reviewed that movie together like 2 years ago here on the podcast, so I figured I was due for a screening. So, and
it was your personal pick when we drafted the movies from what year did that one come out?
It was like in 1985.
85? Yeah.
I don't care what you think. I know you didn't like it. I liked that movie.
I didn't say I didn't like it.
Oh, I thought you didn't.
I liked it.
I thought when we reviewed it, you were like, it was kind of dumb. But I really enjoyed it again.
I remember it fondly. I remember seeing it in the theater when I was a little kid.
Oh, yeah. And the thing was, like, he never made it as a huge Hollywood leading man. And you could say that Remo Williams was sort of his one shot that he had, at that leading man stardom. But the movie bombed when it came out, The adventure may have began, but it never continued. That's for sure. So, But regardless, like, I liked it then. I still like it now. I think everybody that didn't like it, screw them all. I thought it was good. Anyway, so what do you say? Let's do a joke.
Here's your dad joke of the week.
Derek, what was the first thing said at the plastic surgery addicts meeting?
I have no idea.
I see a lot of new faces here tonight.
Oh, I think we may have to sew up your mouth so we don't have to hear any more of these bad dad jokes.
Give you a facelift. But I thought it'd be better if I did it with song.
Any opportunity to sing a song.
Yeah, Hundo P.
Oh my God, of course it is.
Pop goes world.
Terrible.
I'm finished.
Sure.
But I am the one with neck full of gold.
I can think of 11 reasons not to like that.
World to your mother. All right, Derek, so it was over to you this week to nominate a quote-unquote newer movie around here. So
yes.
And just to clarify this, if anyone is relatively new to the podcast, I consider a newer movie to be anything that came out after 1989. So, I mean, it is the pop culture podcast for the generations after all. So I like everything from Generation X, and you are always trying to get me more sort of in tune with the pop culture from the millennial generation. So you decided to go with Paul Thomas Anderson's There Will Be Blood. It's over 2.5 hours long. It's a historical drama. In other words, you come into this, you just know I'm going to totally hate it. So why do you decide to go with this movie, Derek?
All right. So to start with, the movie's got exceptional pedigree and has been reviewed exceptionally fondly ever since it came out. It was nominated for 8 Academy Awards, including Best Picture, Best Director, Best Screenplay. It won Best Performance by an Actor in a Leading Role for Daniel Day-Lewis. I believe this was his 2nd Oscar win or his 3rd Oscar win. Anyway, he was fantastic in it, deserved this accolades. It also won Best Cinematography, and it was nominated for a couple others. I read a thing recently where in 2020, a couple of journalists from the New York Times that are film critics were asked by their community to put together a list of the 25 best movies that have come out since the year 2000, sort of, the next century of movies. What are we looking at? And rumor has it, these two guys put their heads together and both said, well, there's no question There Will Be Blood is number 1. Now let's go away and figure out what the other 24 movies are. And apparently when the movie came out in 2007, it was just considered the best movie on like almost every top 10 list. So critics loved it. I'm not sure how it did as far as generating revenues, but it's a critical darling. It got all these award nominations, and it continues to be, I don't want to necessarily say a cult favorite because it was a pretty mainstream movie, but given that it is long and slow and nuanced, it's not really the kind of movie that we would rewatch over and over again, especially with the running time being as long as it is. But it's one of these ones that if you're into film, if you're a person who enjoys cinema, capital F film, you have to watch this at least once. And I'd be shocked if people who feel that they are film lovers don't enjoy this movie, if not love it outright. It has a lot to like about it. Now, it's not to say it's a perfect movie, and we'll go into it. There are definitely some issues, some flaws, some parts that are maybe not as strong. And, as we go through the podcast tonight, I'll talk about some of the scenes that I think are maybe a little unnecessary or a little too long or could have been cut or could have been changed. But then again, I'm not a Hollywood director. What do I know? And so anyway, I wanted to expose you to this film because I was pretty sure you hadn't seen it before. Paul Thomas Anderson, many people probably remember him as the director of Boogie Nights. That sort of was his coming out party, no pun intended. And a lot of the films he's done since then have been very niche, but very critically acclaimed. And he always has a good eye for picking strong talent to be in his movies. So with all of that sort of build up and preamble, I asked you to go away and watch this almost 3-hour movie. And if you're anything like me, I had to watch it in two sittings. Like I didn't have the time and the energy to sit through the whole thing as much as I was enjoying it. So I'm hoping you had a chance to watch it. If you, I don't know if you watched it in one sitting or not, but that's that. Tell me what you thought, and then we'll do a deep dive.
Right. Yeah, we'll get into it. So I also had to watch it I had to break it up into 2 parts, and it was mostly because of my wife. So I always watch his movies with my wife. And she's like, this is just too long. I can't watch this anymore. We got to take a break. And so we came back the next night. And on the next night, we watched the second half of the movie. And she got up and left. And she's like, oh, my God, this is so boring. I cannot watch this. But we're not here to get her take on it. We're here to get mine. So I've been doing this podcast for 7 seasons now. And I have had to watch a lot of movies over the years. So first from Yancy, and then now from you, Derek. Some of them have been bad. Some of them have been really, really bad. But I will say in 7 years of watching movies, this was hands down the best film I have watched on this podcast. And it's not even close. Not even close. I kind of like The Dark Knight. Yancy had me watch that one. I remember I liked Pleasantville. You had me watch that one.
Alien, you like the first Alien?
Yeah, Alien, which I had never seen, believe it or not, even Gen X. But this movie, my God, this is an absolute all-time classic. Thank you for making me watch this, Derek. It was fantastic. Oh my
I'm
God.
Very excited that you feel this way. This should make for some interesting discussion.
I think I'd like to start our dive into this movie, as you put it. I want to talk a little bit about what I like to call sort of quote-unquote American films. Okay. So I think I would define American films as those films that are not only made in the USA, obviously, but like films that encapsulate the American experience, if that makes any sense. You know, does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Do you believe that there are unique American films?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
So I would say that the first real great American film was 1941's Citizen Kane. You know, the whole idea of the film is pretty much based on the life of William Randolph Hearst. You know, it's about ambition, and it's about power and greed and politics and ego, and it's almost like what it's about to sort of chase the American dream at the highest level, and it tells the story in such a unique way. I really believe it's the best film ever made. So Citizen Kane, first great American film, and then in 1972. Francis Ford Coppola came out with The Godfather, which I would say was the next great American film. In 1994, Quentin Tarantino's Pulp Fiction took a look at the underbelly of American society, but I think all the same archetypes are there. Power, greed, selfishness, crime, loyalty, all that stuff. And now I feel we can add to that list with There Will Be Blood, because this film is about the battle for the soul of a developing United States of America. It's about greed and exploitation and ego, and, well, it's about blood. So that's my take on it. So, I mean, like I say, we're going to get into this a little bit more, but man, oh man, this is one of the greatest films ever made about the American experience and the American dream. And it has all those archetypes, like I say, greed and power and, you know, religion and selfishness, and I'm sure we're going to get into all this tonight. So that's my initial take. What do you think?
Nice. No, I agree. My wife has never seen this, and she was not about to sit through a 3-hour epic with me this week. But she is aware of the film and is aware of how highly praised it is by so many people. So we were talking about it before we came down to do the podcast tonight, and she goes, well, like, I know it's about oil, but like, what's it really about? And so I tried to summarize it into just a couple of minutes of, you know, well, it's about this and that and the other thing. And I think I did a pretty good job sort of tightly, but I could see that it wasn't really something that sounded like she would enjoy. She's like, well, one day I have to be in the right mood. I'll watch it. I'm like, well, as long as that day isn't like this week, I'm like, you let me know and I'll probably watch it again with you. But it's definitely not the kind of movie I would want to watch. Like, so watch it now. I think the last time I saw it was just before the pandemic. And I think I'm going to need at least another 2 years before I'm going to want to sit down and watch it again, because it's good. Don't get me wrong. I love it, but it's a tough watch. Like there's a lot to unpack.
So I always like to take a look at the box office of the films that we do. So this film was released on December the 26th of 2007, right at the end of the year. So I think Christmas. We really need to look at the box office from 2008 to kind of get an idea of, you know, how the film was received by mainstream audiences. And the way it was received wasn't really, really good. I mean, it made $40 million, but that was only good for 74th place overall that year. This film was outgrossed by such luminaries as Welcome Home, Roscoe Jenkins, The Forbidden Kingdom, Bedtime Stories, and Step Up 2, The Streets.
Wow.
This might have been an all-time great American film, but American audiences sure are dumb, because I've never even heard of those other films. I mean, like, top of the box office was things like The Dark Knight, Iron Man, you know, Hancock, and, you know, movies like that. Like, there's all those comic book movies and stuff. But anyway, let's talk a little bit about the cast. So Daniel Day-Lewis, we got to start with him. I think you have to consider him as one of the greatest actors of his generation, right?
Oh, no question. He's top 3, no question. Arguably number 1, but absolutely top 3.
It's funny, you mentioned Kramer versus Kramer before. I always felt that Dustin Hoffman was the greatest actor of his generation. I really did. I always believed that. But I think Daniel Day-Lewis might be the greatest actor of his generation. Now, you kind of touch base on this. He's been nominated for 6 Academy Awards. He was nominated for, first of all, in 1990 for My Left Foot, which he won. Then he was nominated for In the Name of the Father in 94, and in 2003's Gangs of New York. And then in 2008, in this film, There Will Be Blood, he won this one. And then he also won the next time he was nominated in 2013 for Lincoln. And then he was just nominated in 2018 for Phantom Thread. So,
also Phantom Thread, also written and directed by Paul Thomas Anderson, same guy who wrote and directed this movie.
Nice. And the year that when this one came out in 2007, he won, and he was up against George Clooney, who was nominated for Michael Clayton, Johnny Depp for Sweeney Todd, Tommy Lee Jones in The Valley of Ella, and Viggo Mortensen in Eastern Promises. Mortensen
aside from Viggo Mortensen, if he had lost to any of those other three, it would have been a travesty for any of them. But
yeah. What about Paul Dano?
He's a little bit of an odd fish.
Isn't he?
He's got an odd look to him, but he's been in a lot of stuff. Like, I was trying to describe him to my wife, and I said, well, he was again, sort of a minor spoiler here. He was in the new The Batman movie that came out with, the Twilight guy playing Batman. So Paul Dano's in that. And my wife's like, I don't really remember him in Batman. And so I was I'm like, this, and she's like, no. And then I'm trying to think of what else he's been in. And I go, oh, I know where you'll know him from. The Jon Favreau classic Cowboys and Aliens, where he plays Han Solo's son. And she's like, oh, I know exactly who you're talking about. I was like, it's kind of sad that was the role that he's remembered for. I'm like, he was also in 12 Years a Slave. He was also, and I'm rhyming off some of the other like critical things he's been in. And she's like, yeah, I don't remember him in any of those other things. It's like, oh man. So in any case,
I've only ever seen him in two other movies, both of which he didn't speak. So Little Miss Sunshine and Prisoners.
Right.
He's a decent enough actor, but like you said, he's very odd, and I think it kind of lends itself to the role here in this movie. But I gotta be honest, at times, at least for me, I felt that he was a little bit out of his element acting in scenes with Daniel Day-Lewis. Now, I mean,
well, everybody
would be,
but yeah.
But I mean, it was really hard. So I want to talk a little bit about the themes that are at play in this movie. And for me, this movie is about the battle between religion and capitalism and how they're fighting and they're battling for the soul of America. That's what this movie is about.
And not only that, but it's exactly that, but it's also, I think, a look at how similar those two things are, like where people wouldn't necessarily, like, you would think, oh, well, it's clearly they're going in opposite directions. They're two totally different things, but it's like, I think this movie does a good job of really threading that parallel between the two. And you get to see Daniel Day-Lewis's character as the icon of capitalism and greed and wealth and power. But at the same time, you have Paul Dano's character of Paul Sunday. He does the same things. He manipulates, and he's greedy, and he's trying to get power, and he's using his power to gain what he needs. And it's like these two guys are not all that different, despite what each of them probably thinks of the other. And I think that's really clever, the way that it all comes together during the course of the film.
It also reminds me a lot of Citizen Kane. Because Daniel Plainview's only real goal is just to become rich. Like that's it. Like, that's his motivation, right? I'm going to talk a lot. So let's just kind of like dive into the film a little bit. We got to go back through it. So it opens up with Daniel Day-Lewis. He's kind of digging and mining all alone. I'm not sure why he does, but he falls down that mine shaft and he gets hurt like really, really bad. And he pulls himself up, which right there, the ultimate American allegory. He pulls himself up, and does it. And so he almost dies looking for silver and gold, if I remember.
Silver and gold, yeah.
Just like Burl Ives. Silver and gold. Mm-hmm. Anyway, anything that I can sing. But the thing was, he takes whatever he mines and he takes it in to cash it in, and he only just makes like a little bit of money on it. So he's like, okay, this isn't working out. So he sets his sights on oil, and then they start drilling, and there's two guys down in the well, and they're like scooping up the oil. Like, it's dirty and it's gross and it's dangerous. I mean, one of them gets hit when something falls down the well and kills him, right?
Jeez, yeah.
And it really just shows kind of the sacrifice that real people had to make to build that country. You know, how the development of the country itself is built on blood, you know. I also think that There Will Be Blood refers to, and we'll come back to the title in a bit, but I think it also, the blood is not just necessarily actual human blood, but maybe it refers to oil, how that's the blood of the country too, right? So
that was how I always interpreted it. But again, with a nuanced title like that, you can certainly parse it and interpret it in different ways. But I just want to say about the opening sequence, I think the first 15 minutes of this movie is as good as the opening of any movie ever. Like, there's a handful of movies that you say, and I think you and Yancey, one of your very first podcasts, you like, what are some of the best opening sequences? It's like Raiders of the Lost Ark has a fantastic, Saving Private Ryan, excellent opening sequence. Up has one of the saddest, most amazing opening sequences that will make you cry no matter how heartless you think you might be. This opening sequence, just the first, like I said, it's about 10 or 15 minutes. It just sets everything up, and there is no dialogue. It is just the camera work. It's just the actors being actors, performing on the screen. It's the way it's shot. It's the lighting and the color and the cinematography, and it's riveting. It's fascinating, and I think it does a good job of establishing how this movie is going to be as far as the pacing. It's like, we're just going to be slow and meticulous, and you're going to see what happens, and we're not going to hit you over the head with dialogue or a narrator explaining, this was when I went down the well and looked for thing, blah, blah, blah. It's like, nope, we just sit back, watch, and enjoy what you're gonna be in for. Like, I whenever I see this in the lineup, even if I'm not really in the mood to watch the whole movie, if I can catch those first 10 or 15 minutes, I watch. And then I usually end up going to bed because I'm like, I don't have 3 hours right now.
So then the guy that dies in the well, he takes his son and he raises him kind of as his own, right? But he does it like not out of love or anything. He just does it mostly to exploit the kid. He basically uses the kid as a prop, just to make people think he's a good family man, so that they'll kind of trust him and they'll invest, in his oil drilling operations, right? And then,
and he even says that later in the movie, right? He says, I needed someone accuses him of doing that. You just needed a pretty face to get through the door. And later on, he spouts back that exact same line of dialogue to the son much, much later when he's trying to hurt him.
Right. You mentioned Paul Dano. He was Paul Sunday, but he plays two characters because he's also Eli Sunday. They're like twin brothers, right? And then Eli wants $10,000 for the Sunday family land. And by the way, I love how the character who represents the theme of religion in the film is named Sunday. A bit on the nose.
Yes.
But it is. So then Daniel finds out that Eli beats his younger sister if she doesn't pray. So he's like, okay. So he's one of those hypocritical religious types that are all about power rather than the true teachings of the Bible, right? Which is, again, it's just so typical of the American experience in itself. He tries to win over his flock by, like, he's emoting like crazy, and he's like casting out the devil from this woman's arthritic body. Daniel Plainview sees right through him, right? He knows Eli's a huckster. So right from the get-go, this is going to be a battle between religion and capitalism. Right, the whole movie is set up, right? But the thing is, too, like building on what you were saying before, both men are brainwashing the people of the town. One for religion and the other one for oil, right? Yep. The only question is, when you're watching, is like, okay, which side is going to win this battle for the soul of the town, for the soul of America, right? Is it religion? Is it capitalism? And to be honest, that's a question that still is not answered today. 120 years after this film is set.
Well, and you could even argue that as long as both of them are competing, nobody wins. Everyone's a loser. Everyone who's caught in between is a loser in some way. And that criticism, that take probably still holds true to this day.
Because both of them work on a zero-sum game. Right. We have a winner and we have a loser. There's no compromise. There's no like, hey, let's compromise this and you can win a bit and I can win a bit. Neither side believes in that, right?
Yeah. We were just talking about Paul Dano playing the dual role. So the very first time I saw this, I never did see it in the theater. I only ever saw it on cable or on DVD or Blu-ray or what have you. I didn't realize that it was the one actor playing two roles, and I was a little confused when they went to so like he shows up. What I now understand is they're twin boys, and the one kid, Paul, shows up and says like, hey, my family has this farm, rah, 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 you can buy the land cheap. I just want a little bit of money up front. And he does it. And then that character is seen from again in the movie. And then when he shows up on the farm, he sees the other boy who looks identical, and he's like, oh, my name is Eli. And he's like, oh, okay, well, they're twins. I didn't get that the first time through. I thought it was the same kid. I thought what had happened when on my first watching, I thought it was, so he's traveled to wherever Daniel is. He's explained what's going on, and then went home ahead of Daniel. And so when he shows up, he pretends like, no, I don't know you because I'm actually trying to help you swindle this land from my father.
Oh, that could have been.
It took me like an hour or so into my first viewing to realize, oh no, I was totally mistaken. I misunderstood. It's literally supposed to be two brothers that look the same. The one guy came and the other guy has never left here. But when I'm watching it that first time, and that was sort of what I expected to be what was going on, it sort of skewed my first watch of it. So I'm sure I'm not the only one who didn't catch that quickly the first time through, but in any case.
So I'm watching this movie and I'm trying to like figure out, I always try to figure things out. So how does an oil derrick work? Like, I'm often amazed by this stuff. So Derek, you're a documentary. You got to find me a documentary I can watch so I can learn about this. Like, I kept watching the oil derricks, and I've seen them before in movies and stuff, like how they go up and down. And I'm trying to figure out like do they plunge a rod like down deeper and then deeper into the ground? Is that how it works until they hit a?
I think it's like a suction pump, like you would pump water out of the ground. I think it's the same principle, just on a much larger scale.
And then the scene where the derrick strikes oil and then it just comes rushing up, and then it catches on fire.
So good.
When it catches on fire, and then they put it out with dynamite. And my wife is like, well, why are they using dynamite? And then I was explaining to her, like, if you remember back in the Gulf War in 1991,
yes,
Saddam Hussein was losing that war. So he went around and he ordered his army to go around and light on fire all the oil derricks. And how they put them out, and it was a team of like Americans and Canadians that went over there, and they used explosives to put out the fire. And the idea is that you put the explosive, in this case, in this movie, dynamite, and you put it close to where the oil is coming out and it's on fire, and the explosion, just that instant split second that the explosion takes place, sucks so much oxygen into it, it cuts off the oxygen to the flame. And the flame goes out, and then you just got oil coming up. Like, it's just amazing. Who figured this out? Again,
science, man.
It's just amazing. I find that stuff so fascinating. I don't know. I just find it so. But this movie was so stylistic. Like, the cinematography was incredible. You mentioned it won the best Oscar for best cinematography, and rightly so. The scene when they strike oil, and it like blows the daylights out of that wooden oil rig, and the boy loses his hearing. The way Paul Thomas Anderson uses, like, he puts in this loud music, and Daniel Day-Lewis is talking, but you can't hear what he's saying. You know, it's just so stylistic. Oh man, this movie looks
and the visual.
fantastic.
I loved in that sequence where first you have first they strike oil, and it's like black rain everywhere, and the people are covered in this oil. Then it catches on fire, and you now have these black, thick smoke clouds covering the sky, and it basically looks like it goes from daytime to nighttime in a matter of minutes, because these black clouds are so thick, they're just blocking out everything. And and again, it's another one of these sequences where there's no discernible dialogue, because the score has been amped up so much just to help emphasize the chaos, and that there's no real way to communicate effectively. It's just people need to act and do their thing, and it's just like, that sequence is phenomenal to watch.
And going back to one of the thematic elements that you were touching on, there's a scene where Eli comes and asks Plainview for money, right? And Plainview just slaps him around. So again, it's sort of that battle between religion and capitalism. And the thing is, like you touch base on, Eli seems to side with capitalism. Religion kind of comes over that way, because he even says to the dad, "You're stupid. God doesn't forgive stupid people." A truly religious person would never say that, you know. But capitalism and greed corrupt everything, right? Even religion. which we see this today. If you look at these huckster TV evangelists, with their mansions and their private jets, it's not about religion. It's about using religion as a tool to gain wealth. That's it. So nothing's changed. So,
so I want to just go back to that scene you said a minute ago. So they strike oil, and then then Eli goes to Daniel Plainview, and you got to think that's probably the same day or the next day. He literally comes over and goes, "I want my money." So it's like he comes to him, and it's the greed. It's the he wants his money, and Daniel literally slaps him around. It's not long later in the movie when Daniel is in order to get the bandy track that he's asking for to lay his pipeline. Eli's companion says to you need to be baptized. If you want to build your pipeline across my land, I want you to join our church and be baptized. And sure enough, you can baptize someone. I'm not an expert, but there are different ways you can do it. And what does Eli do? He takes this opportunity to be petty and have revenge, and he starts slapping Daniel as a part of the quote unquote baptism ritual. I can't believe that he treats any of his other congregates that way. Nope. But this again, I think, is the pettiness, the revenge aspect.
Power, and it's about control.
It's the power. Absolutely.
It's a battle for supremacy. Again, absolutely. Why this is such an important American film.
And this is where you again continue to see these parallels between these two characters. When one is in power over the other, this is how he treats them. Oh, well, you treated me like that? Well, I'm going to treat you like that now. And you see this happen. There are many examples of this in this movie where you can't hold up Eli's character and say, well, he represents all the best things about a holy man who has true faith. It's like, well, he may have some of those qualities, but he clearly embodies a lot of these other very negative qualities that Daniel Day-Lewis's character encapsulates as the representation of capitalism. And it sort of makes you question, is there some of that in all of us, and or even in all the characters in the film for that matter? So no, I found it was interesting to see those kinds of parallels.
And Plainview's worldview is deeply cynical. He says at one point, "I hate most people," and he sees all relationships as just transactional.
Absolutely.
I mean, look at his relationship with the kid, right, and everybody else. And like I said, everything's a zero-sum game in this. Mm-hmm. And the problem is, I think, is that this is a worldview that's still held by a large number of Americans today. An entire political party in the United States holds this worldview. 120 years later, nothing's changed. There's still people who just selfishly hold on to this thought. Anything that benefits them, screw everybody else. And the scene when Daniel finds out that Henry isn't really his brother, he just goes nuts and he kills him, right? So fine. Okay, it's okay for him to exploit other people, but he can use them in a transactional way. But if someone does it to him, even if it's not overly harmful, he freaks out, right? He kills a guy and he buries him. And then it's interesting because the old man, I think it was Bandy, was his name,
it was
right?
Bandy. Yeah.
He finds out that Daniel killed this guy and buried him, and he makes him confess in church in order to get the kind of the easement to build the pipeline that he wanted. And it's almost like the old man wanted to use religion to kind of tame or to control that unchecked capitalism that was going on. Mm-hmm. So many great themes in this movie. God, this movie's good. And then, like you said, Eli takes it too far. I'm going to use this to humiliate him and slap him around. And then, of course, what happens when religion and capitalism battle for the soul of a nation? There will be blood. And it's literally the perfect metaphor for the American experience. That title, like war, there will be blood. Gun violence, there will be blood. Nazis in Charlottesville, or cops shooting minorities. Kyle Rittenhouse shooting protesters, there will be blood. Whether it takes place in 1900 or now, the metaphor is still there. It rings true. Oh man, it's so good. You mentioned something I thought was interesting. You said it's not a perfect film. It's really long. It's obviously over 2.5 hours. I thought the scene in the restaurant where Plainview approaches the oil guys that had offered him money previously, I felt that scene seemed a little bit unnecessary. It was kind of redundant. You know,
Yeah,
that scene didn't accomplish much for me. Like they'd already established everything in that regard. So that was one for me.
Yeah, I felt that there was there are so many other movies we've done in this podcast where one of my big criticisms is people who choose to be jerks simply because they can, rather than to just be civil. And so there's the scene where Daniel Day-Lewis's character, and at this point he's with the guy he thinks is his brother, and he goes to meet the oil man, and they offer him $1 million,
right?
And he turns him down, flat out turns him down. But then he really seems to get insulted when he's like, "Oh, you can take some time and be with your boy," and he just flies off the deep end and gets all angry at him. And it's I didn't really understand why he reacted that way, and then that seems to carry forward into the scene you're talking about, where he decides to be a jerk about it. I just kept thinking, why would you do that? What do you expect to gain out of this encounter by behaving this way? How is this going to be better for you? He seems so transactional that it just seems odd to me that his character would make some of these poor choices about how he chooses to interact with others. I would think someone who is as transactional as he is would want to always keep options open of, let's not burn this bridge because one day I may need something from this person, or probably in his mind, I may need to exploit this person. I may need to, get an inside track with this person. And there are a few scenes in the movie where he just chooses to interact poorly with other people. And in the circumstances, it's always because he's in a position of power. He's a person of power. He feels he can do whatever he wants. And I guess that's probably the explanation.
Well, yeah, but you're right. What's his motivation there? Because he says to the guy, "You don't tell me how to raise my son. You do not tell me." But what did he care? He didn't really love the kid. He just used him as a prop, So, it was weird to find out, what was his motivation?
Yeah. So the whole part with the brother, I get why that's in there. The idea that even someone who seems to be as shrewd as Daniel Plainview can be manipulated and tricked and conned. Mm-hmm. And when he realizes he's been duped, he takes an extreme measure, which ultimately leads to getting baptized. And there are other things that the dominoes fall in the course of the story. But I find the whole part of the movie from when the brother shows up to when you find out he's not really his brother and he kills him, I find that, in my mind, that is the most boring part of the movie. And on a rewatch, that's the part I'm most likely to fast forward through. I just don't feel like it really adds a lot, other than at this point he sends his son away almost at the exact same time that this quote unquote brother shows up. And it's well, I only need one person to be at my side that I can count on. And so he's trading up one for the other. But I don't know. This part of the movie is the only part that I just really feel doesn't seem to fit. I guess necessary to advance the plot, though.
Well, yeah, they could have taken that whole part right out and just had Bandy just approach him and say, "Listen, you want my easement? I want to see you baptized." That's it. And the way the movie is laid out is because Bandy wanted him baptized because he knew that he killed that guy. But he could just say, "I just want you baptized, period." And then do that. I thought it was interesting when the son grows up and then he wants to go to Mexico and start his own drilling company. Yeah. Rather than being proud, or being supportive, that a father normally would do. The first instinct Plainview has, he's threatened. He sees his son as competition. The amount of greed and selfishness is astounding, because at this point of the story, he's rich. He's rich as hell, and he's in this huge mansion. He just sits there and drinks.
And it's during the Depression. It's not only is he rich, the level between rich and poor has just increased by so much more because of the Depression. So many people have just lost absolutely everything they have, and he's probably the richest he's ever been at the height of the Depression, simply because he controls oil, which now is even a more valuable commodity than it's ever been. It's he's at a point in his life where anything he can buy, he has bought. But by the end of the movie, it's clear that he is alone, right? He is lonely. He has, and this, I think, speaks back to that scene we talked about in the restaurant. The guy offered him $1 million and he turns it down. And part of that dialogue, he says to him something like, "What would I do with the $1 million?" and they don't really resolve that question. And I think this is the visualization of that, the realization of that 10 years later in the movie. He now has probably well more than $1 million, but it's like, okay, I'm rich. Now what do I do? And he's burned down every bridge he's ever had. He doesn't have any true friends. He doesn't have any family. The son, you know, even not by blood, but the son that he raised, he's estranged from. He chooses to fight with them. Like, yeah, it's a sad tale, but I guess the sort of the message here is, if you're going to be successful in business and you want to be at the top of the food chain, you can't have any attachments. Like, you need to just be driven 100% until you get there. But it's like, well, you're there. Now what? Like, what's the next step?
Right.
So
which again is a parallel with Citizen Kane, because at the end of Citizen Kane, he had amassed all this wealth and he was in this mansion, but he was by himself. Right. Yeah. And I'm glad you mentioned kind of that when he was talking to his son, because he describes his son and he's like picking on him and trying to hurt him. And he says, you know, he uses words like, you know, anger and maliciousness and backward business dealings to describe his son. But all of those are just projections of what he is himself. Yeah. Which to me is just another feature of Americanism. This idea of projecting your flaws onto your adversaries. That way it makes it seem like, well, everyone does it. You know, so it's not so bad that I do it. I mean, think about this tactic has become sort of the calling card for the former president of the United States in 2020. You know, like everything that we see in this movie still resonates today. You know, it's still prevalent in today's America, and there's still a battle for the soul of the nation. I bet you if you come back in another 100 years, I think you'll find the battle is still going on. Nothing's changed.
Yep. Now, I want to, we're getting close to the end here, so I want to just talk about the end of this movie.
The final scene.
The final scene.
Oh,
yeah.
So good.
So one of the things, even people who have not seen this movie, but know even a little bit about it, they know the whole line of the, you know, the thing that's been parodied so much, the idea of the I drink your milkshake.
Yes.
And so this is, and again, the first time I saw this, I had heard the whole thing about the milkshake, but I knew it was from this movie, but I didn't know the context. And here I am 2.5 hours in the movie going, I haven't heard anything about a milkshake. Yeah. Like, what's happening? And then so at the end, when he describes this, when, Eli shows up and at first he's all smiles. Yep. He's all like, I have this business opportunity and I'll sell you this thing and I need my 100,000. And Daniel even asks him, how are you? And he's like, oh, I'm doing great. Because he thinks he's about to get this get rich quick scheme. And then when he finds out, he goes, drainage. And he's like spitting all over when he's just enunciating. And he explains, like, all the oil underneath that land has been drained out. And that's when you get the whole milkshake. If I have the straw, I drink your milkshake. And it's just like, oh, that's where that's from. But in the scene, Eli even refers to Daniel at the beginning because Daniel's son is married to Eli's sister. So he says, you are my brother by law. I mean, I guess technically it wouldn't be his brother-in-law, but it would be like his, I guess, father-in-law? No, whatever. Anyway, you know what I mean? But it really just it brings you right to the last scene of the movie where it just goes to show the parallels between these two characters. And he even refers to them as brothers. And it's like, yep, they're so different, but they're still so much the same. And it's the greed and the desire and the need for power. And then when he finds out that, nope, Daniel Day-Lewis is like, nope, I'm not going to give you this thing. And he's like, oh, well, maybe, I've made these bad investments, blah, blah, blah. 2 seconds earlier, he's like, yeah, I'm fine. And then it's like, oh no, I need this money. I'm really not fine. And it's
good point too. Like, because the fact that his son married Eli's sister, they're now locked in together. And I thought in that scene was interesting because Eli asked him for money and he's like, okay, I want you to repent. I want you to say I'm a false prophet and God is a superstition. And he makes him say it over and over and over again. And then he's like, okay, let me tell you how oil drilling really works. But I drink your milkshake.
But that reflects back on the previous scene where he was being baptized and he's like, I want you to say it. I want you to say it louder. I want you to say it louder. Again, it's that, oh, well, remember when you were in the position of power? I had you do this. Well, now you're in the position, I'm having you do that. And it's this back and forth. It goes from the slapping to the slapping and then to the say these things even though you don't mean them, to say these things that you don't mean. And it's like, it's just, you continue to see these parallels between these two characters where when one has power over the other, how can I exert my power? How can I make this person feel belittled? How can I do something embarrassing or insulting to this person, or have them do it to themselves so that they can get what they need? And yeah, to your point, he finally, after he yells this out and he's like repeating it over and over again and he's crying and he's red in the face, and then Daniel's like, yeah, there's no oil there. So
yeah, I already took it all.
Like, wow.
Here's how it works. Yeah. And then I love how in sort of one final violent blow, capitalism beats religion. And there will be blood. Lots of it.
Yeah.
And I think it's also so fitting that it takes place in the most American of American places, a bowling alley.
A bowling alley. Yeah.
And then I think in the perfect ending, the butler comes in and Plainview says, I'm finished. It's just like, oh my God. It's just, oh man, unbelievable. Okay, so you want to give it a rating out of 10?
9.5.
I will go 10 out of 10. Wow. I think this should be studied in film school. I really do.
Oh, I agree. I absolutely agree.
Good. Oh my God.
It's so good.
There's
so much
7
construct here. You could do a whole semester on this, and every week explore a different aspect of the movie, from what it actually is showing, like to the performances, to the way it's shot, and then to the nuances of the metaphor and the themes and the comparisons and there's just, you could deconstruct this movie over a 15-week semester and like have totally different things every single week.
So how did this movie slip under the radar? Like, it wasn't a big hit. Like, I mean, it didn't win Best Picture, you know, like, I mean, I just feel like in a lot of ways that this is an underappreciated film, but it's an absolute complete masterpiece. Yeah,
I think the length scares people away, that it's just got such a long running time, and but I think over time it's definitely gained a following. I think it's gained a lot of recognition. I think the critical praise year after year, decade after decade, getting on these longer lists. What are the best movies of the first 10 years of the decade? What are the best movies of the 2000s? Like, it continues to be on these lists and usually top these lists. I think it's going to have a lot more staying power, and I don't think it's going anywhere. I think this is only going to get more recognition as time passes, and like you said, the themes are regrettably not going away anytime soon.
Nope.
I don't think we're going to get any resolution on this. I think this I don't know if we could call it a morality tale, but it definitely forces you to ask some questions of yourselves, of yourself, of your own beliefs, of your own faith, of your own opinions. And I mean, those are the kind of things that great movies will often do. So it's not going anywhere soon.
Yeah, I usually criticize you for the films that you make me watch on this podcast. So I don't say this very often, but thank you. Thank you, Derek. This was wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. So,
I'm really glad you liked it.
God, unbelievable. So, okay, on that note, let's have some
fun with Caveman.
All right, my friend, you know, there's a game that I like to play around here. We play it on a regular basis, and it goes a little bit like this. Pick the flick. Yeah, pick the flick. You get the synopsis, then pick the flick. You get the year, pick the flick. Okay, so just like the song says, I'm going to give you the year and the synopsis of a film, and you have to guess the title, the correct title, okay? And the common thread is that they're all films about the American dream.
Oh, okay.
That'd be interesting. All right, so 1998. 2 1990s teenage siblings find themselves in a 1950s sitcom where their influence begins to profoundly change that complacent world.
I think we talked about this earlier tonight. Was this not Pleasantville?
Very well done. Okay.
Yep.
2010, a Harvard student creates a social networking site and is sued by the twins who claimed he stole their idea, and by the co-founder who was later squeezed out of the business.
That was the Facebook movie. It was called, I think it was just called Social Network.
All right. 1994. Going back a little bit for you, Derek. Okay. It's an easy one. The presidencies of Kennedy and Johnson, the Vietnam War, the Watergate scandal, and other historical events unfold from the perspective of an Alabama man whose only desire is to be reunited with his childhood sweetheart.
Yeah, that's Forrest Gump.
You're going to run the board on this one. Okay, 1999, a sexually frustrated suburban father has a midlife crisis after becoming infatuated with his daughter's best friend.
Yeah, American Beauty.
Okay, 2006, a struggling salesman takes custody of his son as he's poised to begin a life-changing professional career.
Wow. Did this one have Tom Hanks?
I can't say.
Was it The Road to Perdition?
I'm sorry, it was The Pursuit of Happiness. The Pursuit of Happiness.
Oh, Will Smith.
Yeah,
right.
Basically, it's like right in there in the American, the motto, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
Yeah, that's why I wasn't. The other one that I mentioned was about gangsters. That's why I'm like, I don't think that's right.
It's not the same here in Canada. In Canada, our motto is peace, order, and good government. It's not quite as ambitious, about the other.
But do you know it in French?
But I do not. No.
Neither do I.
All right. So carrying on with this, 1951. Oh, going way back, bud.
Oh, geez.
Over-the-hill salesman Willie Loman faces a personal turning point when he loses his job and attempts to make peace with his family.
I recognize the name. This is one of the classics. I've never seen it though. I'm trying to think. Was it?
The name should give it away.
It should, but I'm like, I've got like 3 I'm rattling around and I haven't seen any of them, so I don't know. Is it Streetcar Named Desire?
No, Over the Hill Salesman, Death of a Salesman.
Oh, Death of a Salesman. I was thinking Waiting for Godot, and I'm like, no, that's not right either. So,
all right, 1974. A Midwesterner becomes fascinated with his nouveau riche neighbor who obsesses over his lost love.
Sorry, what was the year again?
1974. I understand they made a remake of this movie a few years back, but homie don't play that. So I'm going with the original things. So 1974.
I have no idea.
Oh. It's The Great Gatsby. Remember, it's about the American dream here, okay?
Oh, yeah.
2006. A family determined to get their young daughter into the finals of a beauty pageant take a cross-country trip in their VW bus.
Oh, yeah, we talked about that one. That was, it's got Eli in it. It was Little Miss Sunshine.
Yeah. Very good. All right, 1986, while emigrating to the United States, a young Russian mouse gets separated from his family and must relocate them while trying to survive in a new country.
Was that, it's American something. It's a cartoon, right? It's about a mouse.
Yes,
it's American. Was it American Tail?
Very good. Okay.
Wasn't there an Oscar-winning song from that movie?
I believe there might have been.
I think so. Anyway, sorry, next question.
Okay, last one. 1984. A Russian saxophonist visiting New York with a circus troupe suddenly decides to defect from the USSR during a shopping trip to a department store, but he finds adjusting to American life more difficult than he imagined.
Did this one have Robin Williams?
Perhaps.
Was it Moscow on the Hudson?
Sure was. Oh, you did pretty good.
Yeah. Never saw it, but I know that one.
Oh, you did good on this.
Yeah, a couple of the ones I missed, I did. I've just never seen the movies. But.
Yeah. Okay, so next time out, it's time for another pop culture fantasy draft, my friend. So far, we've done...
We're back to that already. Wow.
Yeah, I know. Hard to believe, eh? Okay, so we've done 1980, 81, 82, 84, 85, and 89. So that leaves 1983,
6, 7, 8.
86, 87, and 88. So it's my time to pick one. So I think I want to go somewhere right in the middle. So I'll tell you what, we'll come back next week and we'll hold a pop culture fantasy draft for the year 1986. Okay, so that's 3 movies, 3 TV shows, 3 songs, and 1 personal pick. All must have debuted or been released in the year 1986. Okay, and so far in our 6 drafts, I'm holding a lead of 4-2. So you could turn things around.
I need another win here to get back in the ball game.
You'll get right back in it with a victory in 1986 if you could do this. So that's what we're up for next week. So are you up for the challenge, my friend?
Always up for this challenge. Yep.
Nice. All right. We will come back next week and we will do a pop culture fantasy draft for the year 1986. Until we get around to that, this is Chris McBrien on behalf of myself and our producer Sloth and Derek Myers saying thanks for listening to Pop Goes Your World, the pop culture podcast for the generations.
Thanks for listening to Pop Goes Your World. You can contact Chris and Derek at popgoesyourworld.com. Please take a minute and review the podcast on iTunes or wherever you download and listen to the show.